The Mossdale Cave Incident. On June 24, 1967, a team of 10 cavers set out to explore Mossdale Cavern in England. Their mission was to clear debris from some of the deeper tunnels and to map the passages. Two experienced leaders guided the group, having already navigated the cave before, which helped reassure the others. Mossdale Cavern was infamous for its cramped passages and the few spaces where anyone could stand upright. After several hours of difficult crawling and squeezing through tight areas, four members decided to head back to the surface. When they emerged, they noticed clouds forming overhead, but thought little of it. The remaining 6 continued deeper, eventually reaching a narrow tunnel known as the Far Marathon Passage, barely 18 inches by 12 inches wide, with a trickle of water running along the bottom. Not long after, rain began to fall outside. The surface group took shelter, unaware of how quickly things would turn disastrous below. Inside the cave, the team noticed water levels rising. When the flow became dangerously high, they decided to head back. But they were still 3 hours from the entrance. On the surface, panic set in. A lake of floodwater had formed around the cave's mouth, trapping the cavers inside. Rescuers and volunteers rushed to pump out water and push oxygen into the cave, hoping the team had found a dry pocket to survive in. Tragically, every one of them drowned before help could reach them. The shaft sinkhole tragedy. On May 28, 1973, 9 professional divers gathered at Mount Gambier's shaft sinkhole in Australia. The site was a geological wonder. A small opening led down to a stunning underground lake 20 feet below, illuminated by a single beam of sunlight that pierced the water like a natural spotlight. The plan was simple: stay within 200 feet of depth, where the light could still guide them. However, on the second day, 4 divers decided to push deeper into the western section, aiming for 250 feet, a new record. This was dangerous. In 1973, divers still used standard air tanks, not mixed gases, which made deep dives risky due to nitrogen narcosis, a condition that disorients the mind much like being intoxicated. The divers pressed on. One of the more experienced members recognized the early signs of narcosis and retreated. Others followed him out, but 4 continued their descent. Minutes later, those at the surface grew anxious when their teammates didn't resurface. A rescue attempt found a flashlight and a camera at the bottom, but no divers. Their movements had disturbed the fine silt along the floor, turning the water into a dense, blinding cloud. Disoriented, oxygen running low, and suffering from narcosis, the 4 divers became lost and drowned in the darkness. The Jacob's Well tragedy. On November 23, 1983, 2 college students from Texas State University, Richard and Clark, decided to explore Jacob's Well, a famous but deadly underwater cave. At first glance, it appears to be a 25-foot deep spring, but beneath it lies a labyrinth of submerged chambers. The first 2 are relatively open, but the third chamber narrows to a tight squeeze, leading to a tiny hole only 2 feet wide, an entrance to a 4th chamber where 2 divers had died just 2 years earlier. Their diving instructor, Don, was an expert who had personally recovered those bodies. He had even tried to seal the entrance to the fatal tunnel with cement, but other divers had broken it open again, leaving behind a message: "You can't keep us out." Don himself once nearly died there, trapped in a gravel slide that ruptured his stomach before he miraculously escaped. Despite Don's warnings, Richard and Clark decided to test their limits. They entered Jacob's Well and made it to the 3rd chamber. Richard removed his tank to fit through the narrow hole, but halfway through, he began to suffocate. Clark shared his regulator with him, and the 2 took turns breathing as they tried to escape. In the confusion, they took a wrong turn and ended up in a dead-end tunnel known as the False Chimney. Clark barely made it back to the surface after swimming 75 feet in one desperate breath. Richard never made it out. When police arrived, Don was there, heartbroken to see his students had ignored the warnings and met the same fate he had once escaped. The Gollum's Cave Disaster. On August 18, 2005, 5 friends decided to explore a perilous underground site in South Africa and known as Gollum's Cave, or, as locals called it, the Cave of Death. They arrived around 3 a.m. One of them stayed outside while the other 4 went in. To enter, they had to crawl through a small pool of water before reaching a fork. Choosing the left path, they found another water-filled section that led to an underwater tunnel just 3 to 4 feet wide. Each person had to dive through it one by one, holding their breath to reach the other side. Inside, the group surfaced into a small air pocket, about 3 feet of breathable space. But the air was stale. Cavers call this bad air, a toxic mix with too much carbon dioxide and too little oxygen. Disoriented and struggling to breathe, the group tried to swim back out. The first diver couldn't locate the exit hole in time and drowned. One by one, the others followed, becoming trapped in the same narrow tunnel. Rescue teams worked tirelessly to pump oxygen in and remove water, while family and friends waited outside. But the efforts came too late. All 4 were found dead. Authorities later sealed the cave permanently with cement to prevent future tragedies.